Now, this one I think is a number of you may have seen. Kind of blew me out of my chair, but I don't really know why. I think the reason it blew me out of my chair is I seldom see these reported, at least this type to this level. You'll see what I mean in a moment. This is one you can find on NOLA.com, entitled "Transcripts Show Extremely Sexual Phone Calls Between Student Inmate and New Orleans Principal." Right, 2017, Christy Sampson-Kelly was hired as the principal at Travis High School, New Orleans, school for incarcerated youth, based on a sparkling resume that featured a PhD and national acclaim in the field of special education. Now, Sampson-Kelly is known for her arrest in November on a warrant accusing her engaging in more than 700 extremely sexual and explicit phone calls with a 17-year-old inmate, according to the report by an investigator with the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Department. WWL Television obtained partial transcripts of some of the conversations, most of which are too explicit to publish, but can be described as sexually intimate and at times romantic. In one segment, the juvenile describes an act of oral sex that he would like Sampson-Kelly to perform on him. She agrees to do so, according to the transcripts. In another section, the juvenile says, "I want to hear your sexy voice." She replies that she wants a part of his anatomy that is too graphic to repeat here. And I'm reading the story, so that's what they said. And about in between talk about sex, the transcripts show less graphic conversation. They show that in one instance, the juvenile says, "Tell me you want to marry me," to which the principal replies, "I want to marry you." In another, the transcript shows the inmate asking, "How much do you miss me?" She responds, "I miss you a lot. When I heard what happened, I was furious, devastated, hurt, and angry." The inmate's mother said she took advantage of my child. Now, she was actually married. There's another picture that I didn't go get, but you can find it pretty easily, where you see her and her husband, both seemingly well-to-do, upscale, so on and so forth. Now, I bring this up for two reasons. One, many will say that this is a grown man, this shouldn't be a problem. Now, I will tell you that at the end of the day, when you're dealing with an older woman with a lot more experience as a very young man, and it depends, of course, on the young man, that can be devastating because you are often not emotionally prepared to deal with the circumstances. But here's the deal. Whether he's old enough to deal with it, mature enough to handle it is not the point. The point is it's illegal, right? And again, if this was a male principal and a female student, there would be no empathy. There would be no examining his marriage to assess how mistreated or left alone by his wife he's been. There would be no discussion about how his wife hasn't touched him in X amount of time and how he was lonely. And this student really just touched him emotionally in a place that hadn't been. No, nobody would care. They would call him a rapist, a pedophile, and it would be the end of the discussion. But it's interesting when I see these kind of cases, I hear a lot of people arguing, well, how young is 17? Maybe 17 should, I hear these kind of things. I never hear people say that when it comes to a 42-year-old principal and a 17-year-old girl. I don't hear it, right? But the other reason I bring this case up is because a lot of the times when you see me report on these cases, they're teachers, but, we don't hear about PhDs. And what I want to point out is this stuff happens across class. It really comes down to whether or not it gets caught, whether or not people get reported on, so on and so forth. But this happens. It happens across class. This is my peer, this woman here, right? And the other thing I used to hear is when I would, especially when I would find these cases and I would post them on Facebook, I would always get sisters that would come in and say, well, that's white women. Word? I mean, one of the things we've known in the Black community for quite a while is that whole trope about your mom's best friend. I've met far too many men that have stories about that at younger and younger ages, not just 17, 18, 9, 10, 12, 13. Again, go look at the work done by Dr. Tommy Curry. Look at the article he wrote with, oh man, I forgot the sister's name. I do apologize to her. She did some beautiful work. Ebony Utley. So Tommy Curry, Ebony Utley, She Touched Me. Look at that piece. Essay wrote where they actually interviewed grown men who had experienced this type of sexual violation when they were young. And the data they found was that basically, in a nutshell, Black males had their sexual debut, their first experiences with actual intercourse at far younger ages than Black girls. And what they deduced was that it was older girls and younger boys. But of course, sometimes grown women and younger boys. And in our community, this is often dismissed as a rite of passage. So if there is emotional damage, and the report that Dr. Curry did actually showed that these young boys had the same emotional responses that young girls have when they're violated by older men, but it's just not regarded. So when you have a case like this and you see a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 15-year-old dealing with a 35, 40, 45-year-old woman, there is a vast emotional gulf that takes place. Vast emotional gulf. I'm 46 years old. If I deal with a girl that's 30 years my junior, emotionally, in terms of maturity, yeah, she would be a victim. There's a lot I could do to her if I so chose. That's no different in this case here, right? But again, we don't know how to look at those kind of things, and we definitely don't know how to regard them, right? So protect your children, keep your eye out, and don't get it twisted. Just because they have a PhD and serve as in a high administrative capacity has nothing to do with their capacity to hurt your child. It is what it is. So just be mindful of that.